Well, today we're gonna mix things up a little bit. We're going smallmouth fishing. We're up in Door County, one of my favorite places to be. Everyone knows, there's giant walleyes up here, but it's fall right now. It's October. The water temperature might not reflect it. It's been pretty warm. And so today, one thing I love about up here is in the fall, these fish are worried about feeding. And so it's one of those things where on the Great Lakes, if you run into a school of smallmouth, generally the school is big and the fish can be as well. So I hope you join me today as I show you the next bite.
Fishing the Great Lakes for smallmouth bass presents one major challenge. The amount of structure that may or may not hold fish is immense, and it could take decades to fish it all with a slow-moving bait like a drop shot. Luckily, there are other baits that smallmouth bass love that can really help eliminate dead water or help you find a school of fish faster. During the fall, the fish may be pushed up shallow in smaller schools or push out deeper in giant schools. Either way, if you find one fish, you will generally find at least a small school, which makes it a great time of the year to catch a ton of fish, especially with the addition of electronics like Active Target.
Not sure how big he is. Get in here. Yeah, not the best bolt landing, but just one of those things where as much as you don't want to take the drop shot out of your hand, grabbing it, something like a tube. I have a 3/8 ounce head on there. I'm in 25 feet of water, so just a search bait where I can kind of drift around, scan with Active Target, and just cover a little bit of water to find the next pod. One thing I always like to do is have a lot of tools available, and especially rods and reels, because I feel like if something's readily accessible and it's available, it's ready, you're gonna do it and you're gonna try it. And especially when it comes to covering water, I like to have a bunch of different baits ready and different rods tied up. And especially today, to cover water, what I like to do is I always like to grab moving baits. In this particular fashion, these fish were in 20 feet of water or deeper, so I was gravitating towards a tube a lot of times. Sometimes it's a swim bait, but this is a max scent tube. I have it rigged on a 3/8 ounce head. Just gets me down there quick. I can fish it deep fast, but just cover water. And the main reason for that is I want to be able to move the boat, drift along a brake line, let the wind take me, or pull myself around with the trolling motor and not have to worry about my bait sitting in one spot trying to maintain that bow. I want to be able to move a bait with this tube here. I can just tickle it over the rocks, swim it down through there, and just keep moving. When I get that bite, I can start to slow down. The rod that's probably gonna put the most fish in the boat is gonna be a drop shot. And I always like to have a couple different hook options just because it can change the action of the bait, and sometimes I do prefer one over the other. And what I have here is I have one rigged up just nose hooked, then I have the one that's threaded through, and this is probably my favorite one here. It seems like it gets a lot better hookups. They hooked a lot deeper, and it obviously helps hold the plastic on there a lot better. It lasts a lot longer. Obviously I can fish it really slow because it has that scent. And so this is my favorite bait once I really fine tune an area, but it just doesn't do really good at covering water, and that's why I'll gravitate towards those other baits when I'm really searching. Oh, that's a good one there. Oh, I'm getting that on this one. That's a good one. Come on. All right. There you go. There's a better one there. There we go. There's a nice one. I mean, there's just one thing about drop shotting to me is I like to power fish. I like to fish fast, keep moving, but drop shotting, you can't do that. You have to really slow down. And that's why I like to use other techniques with that. You know, you gotta have some rods that are ready for hunting. Either using the rods for searching or using your electronics really fine-tuned to understand where you need to be fishing. And obviously these Great Lakes fish are so cool because they're so big. Let's get her back here. See ya.
The next bite is brought to you by Mercury Marine. Go boldly. Schaefer's Specialized Lubricants. Putting equipment first. Tracker Boats. Fish the finest. Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. Your adventure starts here. Berkeley. Catch more fish. And Power Pole Total Boat Control. Closed captioning for the next bite is provided by Precision Trolling Data, the authority for crankbait diving depth information. Once you locate a school of fish in deeper structure, it's really a good idea to present them to a plastic rigged on a drop shot. Don't be intimidated by tying a drop shot rig. It only takes 3 simple knots.
When it comes to tying a drop shot, it's honestly really simple, and it's just one of those things where there's a few tricks that you can go along with it to make it a little more efficient, and then also I feel like apply more action to the bait. And I just have a joiner knot here, which this is an FG knot, very slim and thin, but I have like a 10 to 15 foot leader or so. Starting off with a hook, and there's a couple different options. You can have a straight Aberdeen style, which I like a lot, that I thread the bait on for this one, or you can have a drop shot style hook, more of an octopus look, where you're nose hooking that bait. But all you simply do is we're gonna start with threading the hook on. Now hook up, going up the main line. And so a lot of times I'll do, you know, a foot to 16 inches or so, more the better. You can always cut it to what you want. And now what I'm gonna do is basically tie a Palomar knot. So I'm gonna go back through the bottom of the eye to create that loop that I need. And so now that we're through both of them here, I'm simply gonna pull that tag end that I pulled through there until I have that 14, 16 inches of line or so. And basically where I have that hook, you know, sliding on both of those lines with this loop. Now a Palomar knot is very simple, it's just an overhand knot. I'm gonna tie it over top here. And now I pull that loop through. And what I'm gonna do with that loop that I just pulled through is I'm gonna put the hook through there. Simply slide the hook right through there. You always want to wet your line. You have a lot of things coming together here. And I'm simply going to pull both ends tight very slowly so I don't burn anything. It's very limp line. And so now it's on there, but this is where you can add a little bit to it. And so right now, like the hook will somewhat want to stand out, but it'll also pivot on there. Now what I'm going to do is take that tag end that I had and go back through just the top. Now what this is going to do is always stand my hook straight out. So I'm gonna pull that through the top, basically pulling the knot through the eye. Now, depending on what hook you have or how big of line you're using diameter, a lot of times you can just simply pull that knot right through there. Now what's gonna happen is that knot is basically gonna hold your hook up. So that way your line or your hook is not gonna fall straight on your line and hold your bait. So when you pull your line tight, it pivots that hook up, you know, and so that's very simple, little easy trick. Then simply after that, you take your drop shot weight, simply here, a 1/4 to 3/16 ounce tungsten weight. And I like to tie them on just because they're expensive and you don't want to lose them. And that's how simple tying a drop shot is. Oh, come on. There's one. That thing, once again, it never made it to the bottom and that thing just whacked it. I mean, that was probably the hardest hit I've had. I mean, that thing just absolutely, before it even hit the bottom, it must have been racing with a couple other ones. But just awesome looking fish. It's just so fun up here fishing these smallmouth just because you get so many bites. I mean, these schools can be on sometimes active target. It looks like there's 20, 30 of them swimming together. And a lot of times you get a few bites, catch a few, kind of bust them up a little bit, but it's still fun. It doesn't matter if it's a 5-pounder or if it's a 1-pounder. Well, let's get this one back.
Total Control, presented by Power Pole. 20 years of trust evolved from Total Boat Control.
We've talked about the power pole and basically the drift paddle many times. I'm going to show you a nice, simple, easy tip. If you know it's going to be rough that day, if it's predicted for wind, and we've got great weather apps that will do that now, I'll normally install my power paddle right here or right in an area where it's easy. And this is how you do it. You basically deploy your power pole so it's right down on solid ground. It's also at my height. So instead of leaning over the back of the boat when it's really rough, you don't have to do that. You're right here in the stable area. Basically, it's easy to install. You have to install the little clip here. But you can imagine trying to get this put together out on a really rough day, leaning over the back of the boat. I just don't do that anymore. It's too dangerous. And then you just install the rubber grommets right through here. You just have to pop those in place. When you're done with that, you can actually rotate this then, whatever direction you want. I normally will run it in about a position like this, or like this, then I deploy it back up and I go out on the lake and go fishing. So instead of leaning over, the danger of trying to put it on when it's rough, do it on shore. It's a nice, easy, simple way to do it, and it's actually very easy to put together this way.
Fishing a drop shot rig is easy. You just need to figure out what cadence you need in order to get a fish to bite. Fast or still, then utilize active target to put your bait in front of as many fish as possible.
When it comes to fishing a drop shot, I feel like this is one of those techniques that can often be overworked or, basically imply too much action to your bait. Because it doesn't take a lot of movement in your line to transition it down to just your bait. And the first thing I like to do when I'm fishing a drop shot is simply let that bait down the bottom. And what I like to do a lot of times is keep opening my bail because I want that bait to drop basically straight down the bottom. Basically keep my line angle in that big bow. So when I move that bait, I'm basically moving it more vertical up and down than if I tight line it, I'm just kind of flattening out that curve. And so the first thing I do, I basically want to see that slack line that it hit bottom. And now what I'm trying to do is if I'm going to imply action to the bait or move the bait, basically all I'm trying to do is shake the line. A lot of times if you have any wind, that little bit of bow, I'm just shaking that. I'm trying not to move the weight. The situation we're at today, it seems like they don't really want a lot of movement. I'm basically letting my bait hit the bottom and I'm kind of following the slack as the current kind of takes it away from the boat. And if I don't get a bite in say 10, 15 seconds, I simply reel it a little bit and let it fall back down. And basically pulling it up, maybe moving it 5 to 10 feet and letting it re-fall back down, letting the current sweep it again. But this can change, on every spot based off of, maybe how the current is relating, but also throughout the day. Sometimes they want it moving a lot, shaking it constantly, and the bites come when that's happening. It seems like today they don't want it hardly moving at all. And so it's one of those things to play with, but one of the biggest keys is keep in mind is always try to move the line without moving the weight, is you're gonna have the best action on your bait. Can't tell how big he is. I can see him, but it keeps rolling. Let's grab this one here. Oh, there we go. Right in the beak. Just trying to figure out still, a lot of days these fish want that bait almost not moving, and that's one thing nice about Max Scent is it has that scent in it. And it seems like if you can dead stick it, a lot of times with these scented baits, they almost work better a lot of times. But there is days when just shaking it really subtly, basically just moving the line. The key is always never moving the weight, just the line, just to basically put action in that bait. But I'm still trying to figure that out. I can't figure out when the bite is coming because I've had it both so far. So one thing I'm doing today that I feel like is very important, obviously in most situations when you're fishing, is obviously where you are, but boat control. In an ideal situation, if it was flat calm where I could just drive around and make individual pitches to fish, that's what I'd love to do, but that's not always the case. Today we have a fairly decent wind, it's not too crazy, but I know where these fish are and I want to stay here, so I want to utilize anchor mode. But one thing I do a lot is after I find those fish either on a search bait or just drifting, and scanning around with active target and maybe caught a fish, is after I've sat here for maybe 5-10 minutes, you know, and I'm just not seeming to, you know, get the bites, or I'm not seeing any fish. Obviously when I'm on anchor mode, my active target transducer is facing forward, and all I simply do is, maybe it's, you know, 5 or 10 seconds, but I'll just pull it off of anchor and I'll simply scan around. They were last right over here. You know, I can see those fish have slid over here and they're at about 30, 40 feet. Simply hit anchor mode again and I can make my cast, you know, right where I need to be, and I can get back to fishing and stay on top of those fish. There's one. This feels like a pretty good one here. One thing nice about these bass is you don't have to use the net as many times. Not dealing with treble hooks, and obviously not as big as fish. But these fish are just fun. Just because they're so schooled up, I'm using active target to really find the pods, and then just the way the wind we have today, I'm just casting out the back of the boat. Let's get her back here. See ya.
The next bite is brought to you by Mercury Marine. Go boldly. Schaefer's Specialized Lubricants, putting equipment first. Tracker Boats, fish the finest. Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's, your adventure starts here. Berkeley, catch more fish. Lowrance, find, navigate, dominate. And Power Pole Total Boat Control. Hot topics, leading information and tackling techniques to make you a better angler. Presented by Mercury.
So you can have a really, really nice boat like this. You can have a big old engine, a lot of power in it. But one of the components that's really going to give you that great performance that you want from your rig is this prop right here. Now, Mercury makes a lot of different props. They're actually experts at making props. And they come in a lot of different configurations, things like the different pitches, the different number of blades, the different cupping configurations. So what I want to do is talk about a few basics that you can do to help you get the right prop that you need. First of all, let's look at that pitch. Pitch is, you know, this is a 21 pitch prop. That means one revolution should push it 21 inches. If you go to 24 pitch prop, you get 24 inches. So obviously the bigger pitch can give you bigger speed, but the problem is it's also harder to turn, and a lot of times you get too big a pitch and you can't get the hole shot you need. So if you aren't getting the right hole shot in your boat, one thing you can do is look at going down in pitch. That'll let that prop swing a little easier, give you that better low end torque. But you can also get too low to where you get cavitation, it's just not biting. So you got to play with that a little bit. Top end, you want to get the biggest pitch prop you can, but still keep this motor running in the RPM range that's best for it. For this 400 Verado, I've got to be up in that 63 to 6,500 RPM. So a 21 pitch prop is just right for me. Get too big, it slows it, bogs it down. Now the second thing to look at is the number of blades. For these, fiberglass, heavier walleye boats like I run, most of us will run 4-pitch blades. The Bravo 1 prop is a very popular prop for us to run. 4 blades gives us a lot of what we call lift. Not just bow lift where the nose comes out, but the whole back of the boat actually lifts up, gets us a little bit out of the water and gives us that top end speed we need. So look at that pitch, look at your number of blades, look at your cupping configurations, and get the performance that you want out of your boat and really make this bad boy run.
Covering more water using faster moving casting techniques like a jerkbait or tube jig is great to break down the mass amounts of structure on a Great Lake. But often, once you have found the fish, it takes slowing it down with a drop shot to get those deeper fish to bite. You can speed that process up by casting directly at fish on shelves or flats by finding them with active target first and casting your bait right on top of them.
I think this might be a better one here. Come on. Oh yeah. I'll just go for the grab. He's got her good. This just never gets old. I mean, that's just one thing about smallmouth is the action. It seems like once you can figure them out, there can be so many of them there, especially when they get to be this size. You give them a little depth of water. Yeah, I love fishing smallmouth in the spring, but one thing I don't do a lot is in the fall, and the fall can be just as good. And obviously they start putting the feed bag on just like the walleyes. See, these fish are super healthy. But there's nothing better with smallmouth because that bite, there's nothing better, especially when they suck up a tube or a jerk bait. But I'll take a drop shot for that matter. It seems like they're a little fussy right now. But one thing about a drop shot is you can fish deep fast, and the reward is always pretty cool. Another nice fish there. Let's get this one back here. On to the next. Oh, that's a good one there. If I thought I was gonna get him too.
Oh, he came off?
Yeah.
I thought he went back down.
No. And the main thing to me, what I always try to do, is I'm always trying to move my line. Let me start that at the top, actually.
So look at that pitch, look at the number of blades, looking at those different cupping configurations, and you can really get this bad boy to run real good. Run real good.
The one way that I like to rig this bait is just simply by threading it on. Just basically straight down. What I want is that bait to be perfectly straight, just nice and simple. But what this does is when basically you're moving your line, you're also pulling that hook back up and down, and it's moving more of the bait. Sometimes you might lose a little bit of action. It's not as fluid through the water because it's more rigid with that hook in there. But it's just a different style, but I just love the hookups that you get with having that hook threaded back through there. It just seems to get them a lot deeper a lot of the times.
The Next Bite would like to thank Howie's Tackle and Cherryland Hotel. The motel caters to fishermen and vacationers with ample room for parking your truck and boat trailer. To book a room or get an up-to-date fishing report, please call Howie's at 920-746-9916. That's 920-746-9916.